buttons are in front of you. Q&A, you have two balloons together, and the chat, you have one balloon. It doesn't matter where you write your question, okay? And we are just waiting more 2 minutes to start.
Hi, Priscilla.
You know,
I recognize Priscilla's last name. I think she has attended something before that I presented for. Haven't you, Priscilla?
What a memory. Okay, so let's start. So people, you have breast tissue, she said. Christine is also saying good evening to you, Kenia.
Hi, Christine.
All right. Okay, people, welcome to our session, Reflect and Evaluate with Kenia Santos. I'm Flavio Barreto. I'm the academic coordinator for Transfer Me. Okay, and we've had a wonderful week so far. We had Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. We had Claire Venables on Monday. We had Danielle Hershey's on Tuesday. We had James Taylor yesterday. And today, last but not least, we have Kenia Santos to talk about Reflect and Evaluate. Kenia is a pedagogist with specializations in creative education, art history, and contemporary visual arts. She has acted in the ELT field for over 20 years as a teacher, a pedagogical coordinator, and a materials writer. She holds a CPE, a CELTA, a Positive Discipline Educator certificate, and a Train the Trainer certificate. So people, without any further ado, I give you Kenia Santos. Thank you, Kenia. They are all yours.
Thank you, Flavio, for the introduction. So hello, everyone. It is a joy to be here with you tonight. I would love to learn a little bit about you, so please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, to tell me where you're joining us from, and also in what context you teach, if you have participated in the other webinars this week with Claire, Danny, and James. I see Priscilla is a familiar face in this presentation today. So tell me a little bit about you, and while you're doing that, I'll share something about myself and tell you why I'm giving this talk today, okay? So teaching is my second favorite thing to do in the world. When I'm not teaching, I try to spend as much time as I can doing my favorite first thing, which is to learn. So when I was young, I used to spend hours in the school library. I was a curious, crazy, very difficult kid who asked way too many questions. Yes, I was that kind of kid. We encounter such kids in class now and then. I'm sure you have a picture in mind, don't you? So back in those days, I had an art teacher in school who was exactly the personification of cool. She was so cool. She had her own wall in the common area in the school where she exhibited students' work. And of course, everybody's dream, every student's dream was to have something of your own hanging on that wall. Of course, this was also a dream of mine. But that was never a dream come true to me, unfortunately, because only the top samples made it there. And I was never among them. I'm sure you can imagine my frustration with that, right? For many years, I tried to understand why. I wondered why. I wonder if it was because my margins were rarely 1.5 inches on every side of the paper, which was one of her requirements, or maybe my lines weren't straight, or because I couldn't get the techniques and processes right. But in fact, I never happened to know why. She never told me. So all I could do was to imagine why that was. I remember thinking to myself, wait there, in the Renaissance, several artists, they served as apprentices for between 1 and 8 years. Did you really expect me to get things right the first time I tried them? Because that was way too much, right? And well, I just wondered, wouldn't it have been much better if she had helped me understand, if she had guided me through the planning and completion of my work, or if she had asked me to keep a portfolio, reflect on my progress from day one, and then compare it to day 10 and then day 21, but she never did it. I have an MA in art history now, but the reason I'm telling you this story is because not knowing might have actually killed my love of art and caused me to believe that it just wasn't for me. Happily, it didn't, but it could have had that impact on me. So tonight, I'll share some practical tips on how to keep a more holistic uh, and learner-centered picture of each individual learning journey, and also a few ways in which you can include a learner portfolio in your evaluation, in your assessment, that encourages reflection, self-evaluation, and that fosters student growth. So I'd like to start this conversation with a brief overview of 21st century education, which will then help us understand why we need to change the way we assess our students' learning, especially at this point in time. And I'll end up with practical examples of really simple changes you can make to support a more holistic approach to assessment with the help of a learner portfolio, which will contribute to student development. So before we begin, I have a few questions for you. I am curious to learn about how you evaluate the knowledge you gained from the beginning of the pandemic in March up to now. So I would like to ask you to share in the chat box, what new knowledge have you gained during the pandemic? What have you learned throughout the pandemic? I connect with the most amazing people through social media who have taken all sorts of online courses. I have friends who taught themselves out technology, Christine is sharing. I have friends who had to learn technology. All of us have, right? I have to learn how to use this screencast tool that sort of records the screen while you're presenting. Priscilla is sharing all available online tools and sites, building rapport without smooching my young learners. Flavio is sharing he learned there are a lot of things that students can do by themselves. Yes, this is precious knowledge. Let's see. Anyone else? Just waiting to see if anyone else is going to share. Okay. Yes, definitely. Yeah. It's a different way. We have to look for different ways to engage, right? So I think that's it. So from these things, you probably remember the beginning of the pandemic, what it felt like from the beginning, and what it feels now that we are about to go back to having face-to-face classes. Some of us have actually already done that. So how did it feel in the beginning for you? And how does it feel now? I know there is a delay sometimes, so just waiting. Okay, it got easier as we built a new routine. Perfect. It feels like anything else I did before. It was nerve-wracking, feeling that the students may have new issues that they bring to their classes. Yes, true. Good. Okay, so my questions continue. It was quite a challenge. Now I've decided I don't want to go back to face-to-face classes anymore. Sometimes I feel the same way. Well, now I'm going to ask you to think of the skills you have developed, not just the technical ones, such as computer or language, but also social and emotional skills, such as taking other people's perspectives, identifying your emotions and triggers, using stress management strategies, practicing teamwork. What skills have you acquired throughout the pandemic? Technical or social and emotional? So am I, Flavio. Flavio is here sharing that he's now a better internet researcher. So am I. We got really good at looking for things online. Self-awareness, Heidi is saying, watching myself to teach, a challenge to so many of us, right? I think I learned how to manage my anxiety in a better way since the pandemic started, because I was way too anxious from the beginning, but right now it's sort of diminished. And so we continue. I have another question for you. We are now going to consider character strengths. If you haven't heard of them before, a team of 40 American researchers who have long studied human character and its manifestations, they published an 800-page book in 2004 on what they called character strengths, which are the positive parts of our personality that impact how we think, how we feel, and how we behave. These researchers, these scientists, they have identified 24 character strengths, as you see them there on the screen. According to them, we all possess the 24 of them, and we just express them in different levels and different ways, each of us in a very unique way. So looking at the ones we have here, which of these do you express more often, you'd say, and which have you been challenged to develop during the pandemic? Okay, temperance, wisdom, knowledge, and humanity. Temperance for sure. Okay. Heidi, yes. Yeah, I think that gratitude is something that most of us, or that all of us, should have developed throughout the pandemic. Great, with transcendence for you, Priscilla. Okay. One I use on a daily basis is my love of learning. I love learning new things throughout the pandemics. I have read circa a book per week, and I'm also very creative. And then one thing that I had to develop throughout the pandemic was definitely my humor. I had to improve on that. Thank you all for sharing. And then now comes our reflection, because now we have investigated the things we have learned throughout the pandemics. And here comes another question for you. So which of these areas was the most important for you to develop in order to thrive during the pandemic? Would you say it was the knowledge you gained, the skills you gained, or the things you had to learn about yourself? Your character strengths, for example. Okay. We know for a fact that many people who didn't manage to learn new skills to move on to the situation with the remote teaching, they actually stopped. They just stopped and gave up their jobs and or were dismissed. The knowledge, Heidi says, you probably read a lot, just like I did. Wisdom comes first. Okay. So comes my second. Which of them could you benefit the most from developing within the next few months? So do you think you need to gain more knowledge on any area that you have already started gaining knowledge in? Do you think you should work on your skills or learning a new set of skills? Or do you think you should learn a little bit more about yourself, about your personality? Okay, so we have two people saying skills. Christine just shared my personality. Okay. Everyone else is sharing, no problem. Skills again. So many people worried about their skills. Good, it's good to know. And then what steps do you need to take in order to accomplish it? The learning of a little bit more about you, the learning of new skills, you don't have to share these, but this is something you should probably begin to think about. What can I do to accomplish it? What steps should I take? So if I know I need to learn a little bit more about myself, what should I do next? Should I read a book? Should I go see someone about it? Should I talk to a friend I trust very much? Well, why is it that I'm bringing all these questions into this conversation? Because take a day at a time, definitely. But have a plan, right? Have a plan and take a day at a time. Well, the reason I'm bringing it here is just because the demands on learners and education systems, they are changing faster than ever, and I know you have noticed that. In the past, education was about teaching people something. Now, that's no longer just that. Now it's about making sure that people develop the navigation skills to find their own way through an increasingly uncertain, volatile, and ambiguous world. You know, and you may have noticed that we no longer know exactly how things will unfold. For example, well, we can use the pandemics as an example. Who would have guessed we would have to go through such a thing, right? So in the first 20th century, humanity is facing several difficulties at the societal, economic, and personal levels. And often we are surprised. We have to work through surprise. We need to learn from the extraordinary. And sometimes we make mistakes along the way. We all do, especially when we are caught by surprise. And we know that it's often by the analysis of your mistakes and failures, when you properly understand them, that you actually create the context you need for learning and growth. This is something that my art teacher 30 years ago, she didn't think about that. She didn't prepare me for that. Maybe because she didn't think I would ever need it. Education curricula need to change to meet the demands of today's world so that our students have a chance to be the best versions of themselves in this world that is in constant change. Academic success in the digital age is increasingly linked not only with students' technological expertise, but even more important with the mastery of processes such as these you see here, goal setting, planning, prioritizing, organizing, self-monitoring. Collectively, these processes, they are termed executive functioning, and we can help students develop these from the early grades. We don't have to wait for them to become teenagers to start teaching them how to do it, okay? We, in the writing of the Transform Me Kids collection, we have taken the time to incorporate plenty of opportunities for students to develop the competences and skills necessary to thrive in this world that is in constant change. And I will present you with a few that you can also benefit from using in your classroom. So the ideas I'm going to show you now, they are all in our Transform Me Kids collection. Well, the first of them is helping students to set SMART goals. In the Transform Me Kids collection, we work with projects. So students, they are expected to come up with these SMART goals. And well, I think it goes without saying, I don't know if you knew, but SMART is the acronym for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based, because we want nobody spending time on something that is not going to be helpful for them in the future. So measurable asks of them, specific asks of them, what do you want to happen? Measurable asks of them to think of how will you know that you accomplished what you wanted to do. Attainable asks of them, is this goal something you can really accomplish? Do you need help with that? Or can you do it on your own? Do you need a teacher's help? Can you just make do with friends' help? Then realistic or relevant, is your goal too hard or too easy to achieve? And finally, time-based. Do you have a definite time frame to complete your goal? So when we work with students, we tend to, when we work with students, with projects with students, we tend to think that, they are going to find their way. I tell them what I want them to come up with. They're going to find their way and everything is going to be all right. But yes, maybe they will find their way. But we can help them by asking them to prepare, to think about what it is that they really want to achieve, to think about how much time they actually have to achieve it, and to think of the steps they might take in order to achieve their goals. So this is one of the things we use for many of the projects in the collection. Another thing we do with the collection, we use with the collection a lot, is the Harvard Project Zero thinking routines. You may be familiarized with one, a very popular one that is called Think, Pair, Share. Most teachers around the globe, they love using it because it works. So it's not just because it's a thing, it's because it really works. The thinking routines, they are this easy to use mini strategies that can be repeated in class over and over with different topics and across a variety of content and grade levels. Students don't get tired of them. They help the student organize their thinking. And well, there are several. If you don't know, if all you know is the one I just mentioned, you should definitely check their website, Project Zero website, where they keep the record of every new routine they come up with. They provide you with an explanation, with reasons to use it, with a framework, how to begin, how to use and when to use. This is really something. This is one that we use in the book, a routine to activate prior knowledge. It also helps the students generate ideas about the topic. So they come up with a very nice concept map when they use it. See, so it is very useful for pre-assessment before the beginning of a unit of study. This is actually how we've been using it to sort of discover what students bring into the classroom before we offer them something extra. And the check-ins. I have 3 examples for you here. One with challenges, concepts, and changes. Just a second. Yes. So you see, this comes right after a project in which students completed a project you proposed, and it's time for them to evaluate what they have done. So what questions or doubts do you still have about this topic? What are the most important things that you have learned from this project? What do you think you would do differently in the future? These questions, even though they seem silly, and you're probably thinking, I have used some of this in my class before. Congratulations on that, by the way. Whenever we ask students questions like this, we are taking them to the next level in terms of reflection. We are actually providing them with opportunities to develop several of these social and emotional learning skills you see here, character strengths, and executive functioning. For example, if you ask a student about challenges, what questions or doubts do you still have about this topic? We are encouraging him to develop his love of learning and his curiosity, to continue to stay curious, asking for concepts, the most important thing you have learned. So this sort of helps them develop their judgment. And changes. What do you think you will do differently in the future? So this is a great way to practice their perspective, also decision making, to analyze decisions they have taken, and then think of better ways to do the same thing in the future. The other one we have here, you have worked together with your classmate to complete a task. Draw below what attitudes and behaviors help you succeed. This is to illustrate that we can do this kind of thing, the check-ins, even with the little ones, even when they do not know exactly how to write, right? Because they can always draw. So when you ask a child to draw attitudes and behaviors, you're there developing self-awareness, developing teamwork in the case of this activity, because you're going to be collecting things they have done together, they have done together to accomplish a goal, okay? And also self-monitoring. Wow, guess what? I have learned this because I acted this way. We succeeded because we acted this way. So maybe next time we are involved in a project with a group of the same group of students or a new group of students again, we should act the very same way. And finally, here in the last one, this comes after having challenge students to create their own games. So this is the reflection activity for that. How did it feel to win the game with the teacher? How did it feel to win, lose, playing the other games, the other students' games? What ways were the rules and goals different in these games? How did you make sure your game was fair? So this is the kind of thing that we don't often do. We could ask a student to create a game. They play the game. Have you had fun? That's great. See you next class, and that's it. But the minute we bring questions like this into place, we are helping them develop all these skills that are going to be very important for them in the future, even though you think, but this is just a question, Kenia. How can it help? Well, it helps because they might never have been asked such things before. You see, like I wasn't asked such a thing by my teacher in the past. They might even, from the beginning, have a little trouble answering, or just say, I don't know, because they were never given the opportunity before. They might answer with an I don't know. So this is another important reason why we should bring more of these questions and encourage more of their reflection in the classroom through the asking of questions. What I often tell teachers is never assume when you can ask. And throughout the Transform Me Kids books, we ask lots of questions. We don't make assumptions. We ask from the beginning of the classroom, we ask in the middle of the classroom, we ask in the end of the classroom, and in a way that we try to always know what the student is thinking, how the student is feeling, and if he has any trouble. So instead of just asking, do you have any questions, we ask them, ask me a question. Now, when we have this collection of questions, this collection of activities that you, photos you take of students doing the projects that you proposed, or the final product, so everything, whatever it is, if it's a poster, if it's a small book, if it's something like something artistic, a piece of art or an artwork, whatever it is, one thing teachers always have trouble with is thinking, should I send it home? Should I show it? How should I show it? So it's really to work with the documentation. How do I show it? What can I do to show it? Should I show everything? How do I select what to show? So these are questions I often get. There are these three you see on the slide. There are three different ways to think of documentation. The first of them, called documentation, or the documenting of learning, focus on the product. So it will be, for example, you ask the students to make a collage. If you're practicing documenting of learning, then you're going to collect the collage and then later send it home or put it on a wall. Then documenting of learning answer the following questions: what did we do? And what is the result of learning? So it's the end product. It's not bad to collect it, but you shouldn't collect every single product students produce in a classroom. Documenting of learning is observable. So you can, for example, bring parents into the classroom to show them student production. We know this happens a lot. Teachers, they often exhibit things on a wall, just like my art teacher did to us in the past. And that's basically it. Parents come, they look at this, they say, wow, this is really cute, and they take it home. This is documenting of learning. In documenting for learning, we have something that has been interpreted. It involves interpretation, it involves reflection, and it answers the question. It answers the question, how will this learning influence and inform my future learning? So if we are asking the student to reflect, just like in the examples I've given you before, he's going to be answering this about himself. We are going to choose which reflections to include in the portfolio. If you want to make it more student-centered, you're going to ask the student himself to choose which pieces he finds the most important to be collected in the portfolio. Because this is the thing with the portfolio. It's not just that if it's a physical thing, it amounts to a lot. But also that if you're using it online, an online platform like Globe, which is the one that we use here, it's not because it's online, it's not because it won't amount that you have to include everything. Especially because when you include, if you think of including everything and you have many students, well, chances are you're not going to have enough time to do a thorough reflection on what it is that students have accomplished with that piece of documentation. Okay. And the final one, which is called documenting as learning, it documents the process. So it answers the question, how are we learning? Again, it connects deeply to students and to helping them understand how it is that they learn. So what works for them and what doesn't work for them. It includes, for example, asking from the beginning of the class, how do you feel today? I said it once in a workshop, and then a teacher told me that she didn't have time to do this kind of thing at the beginning of her class because she had a schedule to cover. And then what I told her was, if you think that by not asking students how they're feeling from the beginning of the class, that what you're teaching is actually going to just impact them somehow, they might not even be listening. See, so this documenting as learning asks of us to investigate the best ways for students to learn, how they're feeling, what feelings they might have on a given day that are going to influence the way they learn. Not only us, but also them. So it is really to work with emotions thermometers, or to work with after a project is over, for example, to ask the students to reflect on what went well and what didn't go that well, if they liked working in groups or if they would rather work on their own, if there are parts or stages in the project they would rather have worked on their own, if the number of students in the group is okay with them. So it's having them think about what works for them, because nobody's the same, right? So it's this kind of opportunity for them to think about the way they learn. Okay. As I told you, we are for the Transform Me collection, we are using Bulb, but there are several different other platforms. You can easily find them online. And when catering for what goes in the portfolio, there are several different ways to decide what to include. But I think that it's wise to say that you should include at least some, let's say two. If all the time you have is, I have time to collect two pieces of work to make, to reflect on two pieces of work every semester, or to ask students twice, or to actually collect just twice throughout the semester what it is that students are doing or thinking about what they are doing. Do it, but don't just focus on portfolios that contain products or just interpretations, even though it's great to read the teacher's interpretation. The idea is that we work towards creating, instead of pedagogical documentation, which is when the teacher does all the job, that we work towards accomplishing pedagogical documentation. That is when the students are given the opportunity to decide for themselves. So like 30 years ago, if I were given the chance to have a portfolio of my own, I could have done my drawing and then another one and then another version of it. And then in the end decided which one I would like to show. I could have reflected on, well, as I mentioned in the beginning, I could have reflected on what was going on, what was going wrong with what I was doing. If maybe I could watch a video, maybe I could ask someone to help me, maybe the teacher could have given me a few tips, or, well, I could, if I had been given the chance to reflect on my own process, maybe I could draw today. I can draw. I cannot draw, and this is probably the reason why I teach art history and not art making. But then again, these are just a few things that I hope you think about for your, sorry, that I hope you think about when considering your own students and your own classrooms. And that's basically it. I am leaving my contact here, but I would like to hear if you have questions, or if you would like to tell me something that happened in your classroom and that we can discuss here that connects to the collection of portfolios or to reflection and evaluation of students. Please feel free to write it here in the chat and we'll comment on it. Thank you, Figan. Is there any, okay, so what I have done, I'm so happy I thought of, was investing my time at home online in my CPD, getting to know you all in your fantastic work. Has been amazing. Yes, I think that this is one of the things, one of the most amazing things that we all, most of us have done throughout the pandemics, which is to connect with other teachers, to understand that there are other people out there who are dealing with the same issues we have to deal with in class, and then exchange ideas, learn how it is that they have been doing it, share how we have been doing it. Christine is asking a very good question. She's asking about my reading production. How can you read a book a week? Well, it involves a lot of planning. Really, it really involves a lot of planning. I sort of, I know my reading speed. So imagine, for example, that you were to suggest a student to start reading a book a week, for example. How can you do that? Then let's plan for it. First, I discovered my reading speed. Then I try to make time during the day. I think, okay, I'm going to read 5 pages or a chapter, for example, depending on the size of the book. Let's make it 10 pages. I'm going to read 10 pages every day on my way to work. Then I am going to read 50 pages before I go to bed. This is actually something I do. I read 50 pages of whatever book I'm reading that week before bed every single day. And if the book is very exciting now and then, I think, oh my God, I wish I just could stay awake and read another 10, 20 pages. So that's actually planning. Dividing the time you have by the number of pages the book has. Nowadays, for example, whenever I get a book, I look at the number of pages and I think, 200 pages, yes, I'm going to be done in 3 days, I think to myself, you see? So I sort of choose, in the weeks I'm going to have less time, I just tell myself, yeah, maybe this week I'll read something shorter. Heidi, thank you again. It's great. It's such a pleasure to see you here again. Thank you very much.
We still have some time. Oh, there's another message.
It's Christine. I'm thankful for the opportunity of being here today. Yeah. Let's start a book club. I love this kind of thing.
Sure. Kenia, can I ask you a question? I know
yes,
a little bit of you, and I have privileged information about you. I know you have already tried those things you suggest. And I'd like you to compare how are the reactions of teachers and students, and I know you are a coordinator too, so how are the reactions of teachers and students at the beginning when you start implementing compared to sometime further, like 6 months, 1 year? Could you comment on, please?
Thank you, Flavio. That's a very good question. Whenever I tell teachers, or whenever I'm giving a talk and I tell people in general, or if I tell whoever that I use design thinking in the classroom, people just think, but how can you manage? From the beginning, with lots of help, I have learned that students, they will do basically whatever it is you ask them to do, and you get them involved and into doing, but you need to give them an example. You need to give them the exact guidelines. You need to tell them, I would like you to think of this thing and this thing and this thing, so they can actually go and do it. And of course, you have to evaluate what you do. So I am currently in the classroom teaching fine arts, and I work with projects on a daily basis. And the last stage of the lesson is always to think back about what it is that we had to do today in terms of, because we always have a schedule. What is it that we had to do today? What is it that we have accomplished? What have we learned today that is not related to fine arts? So what skills have we learned? What have you learned from the internet? What have you learned from your classmates? Something that you learned that was not from me. So it's a conversation in a very enriching reflection for the students and for myself. So I'm often asking them, what is it that we learned today? Or as a community, how can we use the knowledge that we acquired today outside the classroom? So from the beginning, they need a lot of help. Some students, as I said before, they think they just start saying, I don't know. And you can't give up when they say, I don't know. You just have to ask the right questions, right? Well, of course you know, because now and then, and you know that, we don't ask knowledge questions. Yeah, I'm asking for your opinion. What's your opinion on it? So we have to continue asking questions to help them understand, to scaffold questions, for example, to ask, whenever you ask a question that when a student says, I don't know, and you say, but do you think it's X or Y? So this is a way to scaffold the answer. He's going to think, okay, so this is actually what you're asking, and then they do it. And of course, from the beginning, some of them, they see it as a challenge. I coordinate several community service projects with students. And for me, it's a joy when they just say, I want to do it on my own. See, I think I'm ready to do it on my own. It's not from the beginning. It doesn't happen from the beginning. But whenever it happens, it's time to help them understand being, well, all the decisions involved in the process of developing whatever it is that you have to develop. And I use several different frameworks. I use, you remember, all of you probably remember KWL charts. KWL charts, you familiarize with them, right? We have know, want to know, how I'll learn, what I learned, what action I'll take, and further questions I have. KWHLAQ charts. These help students organize from the beginning what it is that they are going to be working with. So what do I know about a topic I want to investigate? What I want to know about this topic I want to investigate? How I can actually gain that knowledge? Should I use the internet? Should I ask a specialist? Should I watch a movie? What I learned from my investigation? Now that I know this much, what action should I take? Is this knowledge that should be shared with the world or not? And what new questions I have from this knowledge that I have just gained? Priscilla asked me a question here. Oh, what age group I'm teaching right now? Yeah, the age of the students I'm talking about. I'm teaching first-year high schoolers. Okay, but I develop projects for younger students all the time. Most of the materials I develop are actually aimed at younger students than the students I teach right now. So this is it. By the way, Priscilla, if you have younger students and you would like to test some of the things I try or some of the things I create, just talk to me and we'll do it. I'll share some of my projects and you can test in your classroom.
Sure, guys.
Yes, Talia, this is a very interesting adaptation because it covers all the stages in design thinking, for example. It is not a design thinking framework, but it covers pretty much all the stages. Things I know, of course, I mean, when it's time for you to decide what you want to know, you're going to think about why you want to know that, then how, then what you learn, then the actions you should take in new questions. This is a pretty interesting thing I like using in class as well. It works miracles because it drives the students to something they are interested in and not something that I have to teach them. See, I think that this shift in perspective is what actually gets them involved. It's not what I want to teach you because I think you have to do. I think you have to know that. It's what is the curiosity for you? Well, this is the content area. This is the topic. What is it that you know about it already? Because when we don't ask, we might end up talking about things people already know, right?
We still have some time. Any more questions, people? I have written you have the link for the flipping book of the folder of the books that Kenya helped develop. So if you want to know more about the books, then you have the link for the flipping book there. Kenya helped us develop the Transform Me Kids, which is for primary students from Ensino Fundamental Anos Iniciais, okay? And you can see a lot more information on the link that I have just written on the chat, okay? We still have some time if you have more questions.
Talia, I would be glad to tell you more about it. You can either email me or contact me through Instagram, and then I can share a few more ideas, show you how it works, what I had the students produce before. Feel free to contact me. This works for any age group, by the way. Any other
Okay,
questions?
people, no more questions. I would like to thank you, Kenya, for being here with us today. Thank you for developing such a beautiful book with us. And thank you all, people, for being here with us
Very
on
much.
this
Thank you all for
Thursday
coming. It was a
Thursday
pleasure
evening.
to see some of you here, whom I know already, and I hope to get to know the other ones better. Thank you very
And
much. Have a nice night.
yes, and I certainly have a lot of new ideas to study about, to develop my skills, okay? And if you want to know more about us, please take a look at our site, transforme.com, and you'll see more, or XP Inteligência Educacional, okay, people? Bye-bye, see you. Have a nice evening, people. Thank you all.